Hi, my name is Gabby Marshall, and today I'm going to be presenting my research plan for EDU4 LAM. The question that I researched was what happens when I inform both educators and families of the role that families can play in their child's learning and development. The abstract for this is that children are highly influenced by the people around them. I wanted to find out what would happen if strategies were implemented to inform families and educators of the particular roles that families can play. The research was conducted in an early learning service in the northern suburbs of Melbourne, and each family and educator were given the opportunity to participate. The total research time was approximately over a 4-week period at the service, where I'm currently employed. Strategies were implemented to first assess the starting point of family and educators' opinions and thoughts, and then they were provided with information to assess the final results. The results showed the increase of understanding of this topic after strategies were implemented, but there was a need for further exposure and continuous strategies to be implemented to see a further growth. So an introduction to this topic is that the role of families in children's learning and development has been frequently researched over the recent years. The Early Years Learning Framework outlines that children's earliest development and learning takes place through relationships, particularly within families, who are children's first and most influential educators. Further research was conducted by Nolan and Rabin, and that displayed the need for educators to adapt their theories to ensure they are accommodating for the change in social and cultural aspects of our world. Furthermore, it is critical that educators use their prior knowledge and experience to understand the importance of relationships and base their educational practices on those experiences. Therefore, I decided to explore multiple strategies in my early learning centre, engaging both family and educators in these experiences. The main method for my research was through questionnaires and surveys. So I started off with doing a pre-survey average score. So that was conducting a survey amongst all families and educators to see where they were sitting in this topic. So from the pre-survey average score for families, it was shown that most of the scores were quite low, except their desire to be involved is quite high. For the educator survey, the results were the same. They were sitting a bit higher than the family's understanding, but it definitely still showed a need for improvement. After the strategies were implemented, the post-survey average score showed that families had a greater understanding of their role in the setting, and educators also understood how they could involve families even more. So the strategies that I implemented were those surveys. I also held an information session which 12 family members and 11 educators attended, and this was just to outline what the research was going to be and the strategies that were going to be implemented. A newsletter was created and handed out to families and educators about the research and what strategies were going to be put into place just so that they were aware. Then pamphlets were created with information about the centre's desire for family involvement and the different ways that this can be achieved, and that was just left on a notice board so that all families and educators could have access to it. A connection wall was designed in our foyer, which was to allow families to connect by sharing business cards or organising playtimes and things like that, and that was just to bring the families together into a community setting. There was an induction process, and that was ensuring that there were strategies for family involvement and the importance of this included in our educator inductions, just so that any new educators were definitely aware of the desire that we have for family inclusion. In our foyer, there were brochures for where to seek support for families with ESL, so that was just to really make sure that we're including all people and that there's no exclusion of anyone there. Also, a cultural awareness session was held, and this was from one of the dads of the children who attend the centre, and he actually works for a company that run PDs on cultural awareness and how that is a major part of the role of the family and the educator in children's lives. So this is just some of the feedback that I received after the strategies were implemented. So parents were just saying how they understand the importance of the role that they play in their children's lives, how they can become more involved in the centre, how their previous opinion was that they just drop off their children and that's it, but how now they understand how much more of a role they can play. They were talking about how their children were so excited that they were able to now be involved, and that really helped their sense of belonging. So just a lot of positive feedback from both parents and educators here. So the analysis of my research was that I was able to introduce this research topic into my setting with ease and enthusiasm from those around me. Both the families and educators were very excited to be a part of something like this. And the strategies were implemented in the time frame needed, and there were no hold-ups or barriers to completing this research. So from the surveys, they asked families and educators to complete the first survey with little guidance or information to ensure the results were accurate and unaffected. The results from the first family survey displayed that a majority of people were mostly unaware, however extremely willing to participate in the area of their child's life. Once the strategies were implemented and in place, the results shifted majorly to families and educators having a stronger understanding of their role and how they can achieve this moving forward. The information session was an opportunity for discussion amongst myself and the families and educators who attended. We talked about the results of the surveys and why they may have felt that way, and then we discussed some points from the literature review and why it is important that we all understand the role we play. There was lots of group discussions through this and lots of chat back and forth about their opinions, and it was really positive interactions happening. The newsletter that was provided with information, and this was particularly to those who couldn't attend the information night, and that just outlined all the things we went through during the information session. The pamphlets provided a brief introduction into the topic and outlined ways of how families can be involved in their children's learning, and all the pamphlets were collected from the foyer and positive verbal feedback was given. The connection wall was a huge hit. This provided families and educators with strategies to develop those relationships among themselves and the centre, and develop that sense of community that we're really looking for. So I reviewed the educator induction process and noticed that there was nothing to do with families and the importance of developing strong relationships with them. So we sat down with the educators and just gave them a brief outline of that, and it really inspired educators, and some of them had told us how they didn't really ever think about the importance of family relationships. The ESL resources. So all settings must ensure that there are adequate resources for all families, including those with ESL, and if they are supported by these services, it will enable them to develop the understanding of their role and how they are represented in the centre. The cultural awareness session was a huge hit. This dad spoke about what cultural awareness is and how it is more than just where you were born, and how all of this can influence our role in children's lives. It extended on everyone's understanding and appreciation for the important parts we play in the learning and development of children, and so this was just a really positive experience for all. So it was great to see all people involved and that they responded so positively and with enthusiasm to this research. This research found that when I informed families and educators of the roles that they can play in children's learning and development, there was a significant positive change, and that was almost immediately. From this research, I was able to develop my own personal understanding of the role that families can play in the children's learning and development, and it was seen that simply opening up the topic for discussion and providing a way forward was so instrumental, and that there is only room for improvement in this topic. So in summary, my findings showed that when families and educators are exposed to the potential of their role in children's early learning and development, there is a positive change in opinions and thoughts, and therefore in the actions.